When my uncle sent me that video, I felt my entire world shift, as if the very foundation of my life had been pulled out from under me. There they were, my parents and my brother, sitting around our old kitchen table in Phoenix, casually dissecting my existence as though I were nothing more than an inconvenient obligation. The familiar Arizona sun streamed through the windows, casting a warm golden glow over the room, a cruel contrast to the icy words being spoken. "Madeline only helps because she owes us," my mother declared, her voice laced with contempt. "After everything we've done for her, paying the mortgage is the least she can do." Tomas let out a short, derisive laugh and leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Yeah, and she acts like she's doing us some huge favor. What a joke." But the worst part wasn't my mother's scorn or my brother's smug dismissal. No, the part that cut the deepest was my father. Once my hero, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who spent late nights helping me with math homework, sitting there in silence, nodding in quiet agreement. The betrayal settled in my chest like a lead weight. The video was shaky, clearly taken without their knowledge, but their words came through crystal clear. I watched it 3 times, each viewing stripping away another layer of disbelief, replacing it with something colder, sharper. Numbness. Clarity. For the past 4 years, I had been making substantial payments on their mortgage through my LLC, Divine Investments. They believed they were making payments to a bank, never bothering to read the fine print of the agreement my financial advisor had set up. Every month, they transferred their small contribution while I covered the bulk of the cost. And yet, here they were, complaining about my minimal help. A message from my Uncle Jason popped up immediately after the video ended. "You needed to see this, Madeline. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. They've been talking like this for months." I sat in my home office, staring at the spreadsheets detailing every payment I had made. The numbers didn't lie. Over $200,000 invested to keep them comfortable in that house. My hands should have been trembling with anger, but instead they were steady as I pulled out the mortgage agreement. A small, knowing smile played at my lips as I scrolled to a specific section. The purchase option clause. Just in case, my financial advisor had insisted at the time. Looking back, I wonder if she had sensed something like this might happen. The next payment was due in 2 weeks. And for the first time, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I picked up my phone and typed out a simple message to my uncle. "Thank you for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't let them know you sent this. But things are about to change." I had always been the family's safety net, though they would never admit it. 4 years ago, when the housing market in Phoenix crashed and they were on the brink of losing their home, I stepped in. I was 27 then, already successful in my career as a software development manager. The irony? They had never approved of my choices. "Software is no career for a woman," my mother would scoff, lips pursed in disapproval. "Your brother Thomas is the one with real business sense." Yet, Thomas, with all his so-called business sense, had nearly bankrupted my father's real estate company within 2 years of taking over. When they came to me for help with the mortgage, I consulted my financial advisor, Kate. "Create an LLC," she suggested. "Buy the house through it and let them think they're still dealing with a bank. That way you protect yourself legally while helping them." At the time, it had seemed like the perfect solution. They could keep their pride intact while I ensured their stability. Divine Investments LLC became their mortgage holder, and I continued to quietly cover the bulk of their payments. My Uncle Jason was the only one who knew the truth. He had overheard Kate and me discussing it at a family gathering. "You're too good to them, Madeline," he had said, shaking his head. "They don't deserve your kindness." I had defended them, of course. "They're family. They might not understand my choices, but they've always given me a home." Now, watching that video for the 4th time, I realized just how wrong I had been. Their words played on an endless loop in my mind. "She owes us." What a joke. "The least she can do." Each phrase cut like a knife, twisting deeper with every repetition. I turned back to my laptop and logged into the LLC's account. The next mortgage payment was due on the 15th, just 2 weeks away. They had never been late before, always transferring their portion like clockwork. But now, knowing what I knew, I had no intention of making that payment. This time, I wouldn't step in to cover the rest. Let them face the consequences of their own ingratitude. Let them deal with the bank on their own. They had no idea that their so-called worthless burden of a daughter was, in reality, their landlord. The thought alone brought a slow, knowing smile to my lips. Sometimes, karma needs a little push. But the video wasn't the end of it. The very next day, Uncle Jason sent me even more evidence, screenshots from a family group chat that I had been deliberately excluded from. They had created it 6 months ago and, in a bitter twist of irony, named it Family Finances. Each message felt like a fresh stab of betrayal, cutting deeper than the last. "Madeline thinks she's so special with her tech job," Thomas had written. "She barely helps with the mortgage, while I'm here every day running Dad's business." My mother's response made my blood run cold. "We should ask her for more money. She's single with no kids. What else does she spend it on? After all we sacrificed to raise her, she can't even properly support her family." My hands trembled slightly as I pulled up my financial records. With careful precision, I calculated the exact amount I had contributed over the past 4 years, $267,843, while they had only managed to pay a total of $52,500. Month after month, they had assumed they were simply making their mortgage payments to the bank, oblivious to the reality. I had been covering an additional $5,400 every single month, ensuring they could stay in the house they called home. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. "Sweetie, could you come to dinner this Sunday? We need to discuss something important." I didn't need to guess what that something was. They were planning to ask for more money, probably employing their usual tactics: emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, and carefully orchestrated performances designed to make me feel like I owed them. The thought of sitting at that table, pretending I didn't know what they truly thought of me, made my stomach churn. I called Kate, my financial advisor. "I need to know my options with the purchase agreement." Kate exhaled softly. "I had a feeling you might. Remember that clause we included? If they miss a payment, Divine Investments can exercise the purchase option immediately. The house would be yours outright, and they'd become month-to-month tenants." A plan began to take shape in my mind. "And if they're late with rent?" "Standard Arizona eviction laws would apply. You'd be within your rights to give them notice." She hesitated before asking, "Madeline, are you sure you want to go this route?" I thought about it all, the years of condescension, of being the family ATM while they ridiculed me behind my back. I thought about Thomas, the golden child, running my father's business into the ground while they still praised his so-called business sense. I thought about every dismissive comment about my career, my life choices, my supposed obligations to them. "Yes," I said, my voice unwavering. "I'm sure. But I won't tell them anything yet. Let them think everything is normal for now." I typed out a quick reply to my mother. "Of course, I'll come to dinner, looking forward to it." The heart emoji I added at the end felt ironic but necessary. After all, they had taught me well. Sometimes, the best revenge requires a perfect poker face. The next mortgage payment was due in 13 days, and for the first time since this arrangement began, I wouldn't be there to catch them when they fell. Sunday dinner became an exercise in self-restraint. I arrived at their Phoenix home precisely at 6. The setting sun painted the desert landscape in hues of orange and deep purple, casting long shadows over the house. My house, technically. Yet, to them, nothing had changed. The air carried the familiar scent of my mother's homemade lasagna, an obvious ploy to stir up nostalgia, to remind me of the good times. "Madeline, sweetheart!" My mother rushed forward, wrapping me in an embrace, her designer bracelet catching the light. I noticed it was new, no doubt bought with money they should have put toward their mortgage. Payment was due in 9 days. Thomas lounged at the dining table, looking smug in his carefully pressed business casual attire. "Hey sis," he greeted me with a smirk. "Good of you to make time for your family." I smiled, remembering Tomas's message about me barely helping. If only he knew that his entire lifestyle depended on my generosity. "I always have time for family," I replied, the irony thick in my throat. At that moment, my father emerged from his study, his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. He was reviewing some papers, and with a quick glance, I recognized them as bank statements. The sight nearly made me laugh. They were preparing their pitch carefully, making sure to get everything in order before approaching me. "Before we eat," my mother began, setting down the lasagna, "we wanted to talk about something important." She glanced at my father, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course," I said, serving myself a portion. "What's on your mind?" Thomas cleared his throat, straightening in his chair. "Well, as you know, Dad's business has been facing some challenges. The real estate market isn't what it used to be." I took a slow bite of lasagna, chewing thoughtfully. The business had been struggling ever since Thomas took over, despite the Phoenix market being stronger than ever. "We've been thinking," my mother continued, reaching for my hand across the table, "about how blessed we are to have such a successful daughter." "Here it comes." "Your father and I sacrificed so much to give you a good education," she said, her voice tinged with feigned humility. I watched her performance with newfound clarity. The gentle touch, the careful reminder of their sacrifices. Every move was deliberate, rehearsed. "The mortgage payment has become quite a burden," my father added, his tone carrying that particular weight of authority he always used to make me feel small. "And with you doing so well in your computer work—" "Software development," I corrected automatically, though they had never bothered to understand the difference. Right, he waved a hand dismissively. "Well, we thought perhaps you could help more with the monthly payments. After all, this is your family home too. If only they knew how much of it was already mine." "We're only asking for an extra $2,000 a month," my mother added quickly. "It's not much, considering your salary." I took another bite of lasagna, using the moment to compose myself. They wanted $2,000 more when they didn't even realize I was already paying over $5,000. The audacity was almost impressive. "I'll think about it," I said finally, keeping my voice neutral. "Times are a bit uncertain right now." "Uncertain?" Thomas scoffed. "Please, we all know you're doing fine. Unlike some of us, who are actually working hard to keep this family's legacy alive." I smiled, thinking about the notification their bank would send when they missed their payment next week. "You're right, Thomas. Sometimes we all get exactly what we deserve." After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom, but took a deliberate detour past my father's study. The door was ajar, and I could hear their voices in hushed conversation. I paused, my heart pounding as their words drifted out. "She's not going to help," Thomas said bitterly. "Did you see how she just sat there, acting all superior with her tech money while our business is struggling?" "Patience," my father replied. "We have another option. Remember those investment documents I found in her cloud storage when she used our Wi-Fi last month? She's been hiding money from us in some company called Divine Investments." My blood ran cold. They had snooped through my files. I had carelessly used their Wi-Fi during my last visit, and my cloud storage had automatically synced. "I looked it up," my father continued. "It's a legitimate LLC, and it's doing very well. She's been squirreling away money there instead of helping her family." "I raised a snake," my mother's voice chimed in. "We'll give her one more chance to help voluntarily. If not, I'll remind her about that time in college when she took money from your business account for tuition. She thought we never knew, but we have proof. She'll have to help us then." I bit my lip to keep from gasping aloud. They knew. Laughing to themselves, they had no idea how misguided their threats were. The money they spoke of, I had borrowed it with my father's permission when their check for my tuition bounced. Not only had I paid it back within a month, but I had also included interest. I even had emails proving everything. Their attempted blackmail was as pathetic as it was desperate. "And if that doesn't work," Thomas added casually, "we can always reach out to her HR department, ask some questions about her mental stability, maybe suggest she's been stealing company resources for personal projects. That would get their attention." The sheer ease with which they discussed destroying my career sent ice through my veins. These people weren't family. They were parasites, wearing the masks of family. I quietly slipped back to the bathroom, flushed the toilet for effect, and then returned to the dining room. Moments later, they re-entered, all wearing practiced smiles. "Madeline, dear," my mother said sweetly, "have you given any thought to what we discussed about helping more with the mortgage?" I met her gaze steadily. "Actually, I have. You're right. Family should help family. I'll have an answer for you in about 8 days." The timing wasn't random. Their mortgage payment was due in exactly 8 days, and I knew exactly what would happen when they missed it. Divine Investments would finally reveal its true ownership. 8 days? Thomas frowned. Why such a specific timeline? I stood up, gathering my purse. Just need to check some things with my financial advisor. You understand, right? Being careful with money is just good business sense. I smiled at Thomas as I echoed their favorite phrase. My mother walked me to the door, pulling me into another calculated hug. We knew you'd understand, sweetheart. Family always comes first. Yes, I agreed, thinking of the eviction notice already drafted in my office. Family always gets exactly what they deserve. As I drove home, I called my Uncle Jason. You were right about them, I said as soon as he answered. But don't worry, I'm done playing the silent partner in their little drama. It's time for the final act. The week crawled by with excruciating slowness. My family kept up their pressure campaign, sending daily texts about their urgent financial situation. Each message only hardened my resolve. I forwarded everything to Kate, my financial advisor, who was helping me prepare for the inevitable confrontation. The paperwork is ready, Kate confirmed during our meeting 3 days before the payment was due. Once they miss the payment, Divine Investments can exercise its purchase option immediately. I've also prepared the eviction notices, just in case. I nodded, reviewing the documents. And you're sure everything's legally sound? They can't fight this? They signed the agreement 4 years ago, Kate assured me. Your father barely read it. He was too desperate for the bailout. Everything's perfectly legal. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Thomas. Hey sis, I was just talking to my friend in tech recruitment. Heard some companies are doing layoffs. Must be scary for you. Good thing you have family to fall back on. Speaking of which, about that help we discussed? His attempted manipulation was so transparent it was almost comical. I showed the message to my Uncle Jason over coffee the next day. He sighed, shaking his head. They never change. Your aunt and I watched them do this to everyone in the family. It's why we distanced ourselves years ago. Did you know they went through my files when I visited? I asked. Jason didn't even look surprised. They did the same to your cousin when she stayed there last year. They're always looking for leverage. He paused. Are you ready for the fallout? They won't take this well. I thought about their threats to contact my company's HR, their plans to blackmail me, their years of taking my help while mocking me behind my back. I'm ready, I said. They made their choice. Now they'll face the consequences. 2 days before the payment was due, my mother called. Madeline, we need your answer about the mortgage help. Times are tough and family needs to stick together. Don't worry, Mom, I replied, my voice steady. Everything will be clear very soon. That night, I received an email from their bank. They had attempted to transfer money to Divine Investments, but the payment had bounced. They were already overdrawn. I forwarded the notification to Kate. Here we go, she replied. Want me to start the proceedings tomorrow? I thought about the lasagna, the fake smiles, the years of manipulation. Yes, it's time. Dinner. Their smug faces, their casual discussion of destroying my career. I thought about the years of manipulation, the constant demands, the endless ingratitude. No. I typed the response quickly, my fingers steady. Let them wait until the payment officially fails. Let them spend the next 2 days thinking everything is fine. They had taught me well, timing is everything. I opened my laptop and began drafting an email to my company's HR department, documenting my family's threats and attaching the evidence Uncle Jason had gathered. Better to get ahead of any potential attacks. The end was in sight and I was leaving nothing to chance. Sometimes, I muttered to myself, the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own actions. The payment deadline came and went. At exactly 9 a.m., Divine Investments' automated system sent out its default notice. I sat back, phone in hand, watching the clock, counting down the seconds until the inevitable call. It took exactly 12 minutes. Madeline, my mother's voice was frantic. Something's wrong with our mortgage payment. The bank is saying we defaulted, but that's impossible. We need your help immediately. I kept my voice calm, even. Actually, I replied, Divine Investments isn't a bank. It's an LLC. My LLC, to be specific. The silence on the other end was deafening. "What?" she finally whispered. "Check your email," I said. "You'll find a notice explaining that, due to your default, Divine Investments is exercising its purchase option. The house is now legally mine. Your status has been changed to month-to-month tenants." This is a joke," she stammered. "No joke," I said evenly. "I've been covering the majority of your mortgage for 4 years while you all mocked me behind my back, called me a burden, plotted to blackmail me, threatened my career." A beat of silence. Then, "How did you—" "Uncle Jason showed me the video," I interrupted. "He showed me everything." I took a breath, then delivered the final blow. "Now, about your tenancy. Your first rent payment is due in 30 days. I suggest you start looking for somewhere else to live." My father's voice suddenly broke in. They had put me on speaker. "You ungrateful." "Careful," I cut him off. "Is that any way to talk to your landlord? The eviction notice is ready. Don't make me serve it sooner than planned." I ended the call and blocked their numbers. Minutes later, my inbox began filling with messages, not from them, but from the expected wave of flying monkeys. Distant relatives, family friends, acquaintances. "How could you do this?" "Family forgives family." "You're being cruel." I deleted them all without reading them. Some debts can't be paid with forgiveness. 3 months later, I stood in the empty house, my footsteps echoing through the vacant rooms. My family had finally moved out last week, forced to downsize to a small apartment across town. They had tried everything: threats, guilt trips, legal challenges. But in the end, the documents were ironclad. They had no choice but to accept reality. Thomas had made one last desperate move, attempting to contact my company's HR department with false accusations. It backfired spectacularly. Thanks to my preemptive documentation and Uncle Jason's evidence, his claims were dismissed immediately. Instead, his actions were reported to his real estate board, triggering an ethics investigation. It effectively ended his career. My mother's final attempt at manipulation came through in a tear-filled voicemail. "How could you do this to your own family?" The answer was simple. They had shown me exactly what family meant to them, and I had finally believed them. I walked through the kitchen, where it had all started, where they had sat around the table calling me worthless, while I paid their bills. The irony wasn't lost on me. Uncle Jason and his wife were coming over later to help me prepare the house for sale. The proceeds would go toward establishing a foundation for victims of financial abuse. Something good could come from this after all. My phone buzzed. A text from Kate. "Just heard from their lawyer. They're finally signing the last papers. It's really over." I smiled, looking around at the empty house one last time. They had always told me that family comes first, but they had never specified which family. I chose myself, and for the first time in years, it felt exactly right. Standing in the empty house, I took a deep breath, letting the silence settle around me. This journey had been painful, but it had taught me lessons I would never forget. And if you're listening to this, maybe there's something here for you too. The biggest lesson? Loyalty should be a two-way street. Love and support are not obligations. They should be freely given and reciprocated. I spent years believing that because they were my family, I owed them everything. But family is more than just blood. It's about respect, about mutual care, about people who stand by you, not those who tear you down. Trust is fragile. When someone shows you who they truly are, believe them. I ignored the red flags for years because I wanted to see the best in them. But love should not come at the cost of self-respect. If you find yourself constantly justifying someone's actions, constantly forgiving betrayal after betrayal, stop and ask yourself, are they really deserving of my trust? Financial abuse is real. Just because someone raised you doesn't mean they're entitled to control your finances or exploit your success. You are not an ATM. You are not a safety net for people who refuse to take responsibility for their own lives. Helping out of kindness is one thing, being manipulated into it is another. And finally, the most important lesson of all, choosing yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. There comes a point where you have to decide, do I keep sacrificing myself for people who will never appreciate it? Or do I step away and build a life where I am valued? I chose myself, and for the first time in years, I feel free. If you're in a situation like mine, if you feel trapped by expectations, guilt, or obligation, remember this. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to protect your peace, to stand up for yourself, to demand respect. You are allowed to say no. And if they call you heartless for it, if they try to guilt you, manipulate you, make you doubt yourself, just remember, people who truly love you would never put you in a position where you have to choose between their happiness and your own. So choose yourself. It's not just the right decision, it's the only decision that truly matters.